So a theory I've had for a while is that the emotions we put off are used by some of the non-physical intelligence or the unseen or the spirits that we interact with. This isn't just in a haunted site. It's anywhere that these things can exist. The theory basically here, as you can see, is called non-physical intelligence's use of biologically emitted energy as a fuel source for manifestation. As I like to call it, it's emotional energy. It's an emotional energy theory that I'm going to go over. And the reason I want to go over this is because I was finally able to do the experiment the way I wanted to at Madison Seminary, and I wanted to show you guys just what the theory is, and it leads up to the actual experiment itself. So basically, we elicit emotional energy when we get sad, when we get happy, just in a neutral state. Our body is always giving off some kind of energetic presence that goes into the air. This same energy is felt in very traumatic events. Very happy events are just the continued presence of that shifting of emotion in a site, a place, like our home. This energy, in turn, goes out into the environment and can either be soaked into a site, similar to how residual energy works, or it can be used. And you've probably heard in places that a spirit will use your energy, or something malevolent will use your energy. A great example of this is psychokinetic energy. When you hear about poltergeist, it's typically a creation of someone's energy, just untamed energy. Typically, when you deal with a poltergeist, at least when I do, I tell people, first of all, try to locate, is there someone in the house going through traumatic incidents? And then once that happens, I try and figure out if that individual is sensitive in any way. And typically, my sort of remedy for that, not even a remedy, just to calm it down, is to tell that person to find some way to meditate. Explain to them that, hey, you're open and you may be a sensitive, and what's happening is you're pretty much just leaking like a sieve, and that energy is just accumulating somewhere, and it eventually gathers some kind of intelligence. Anyway, going way off the point here. The thing is, we all have energy. We all let this energy off, and I'm a very strong believer that the unseen in these sites, whether they be ghosts, spirits, malevolent energy, non-human energy, they feed off of that. They feed off the energy in a spot, and they'll feed off the energy that the spirits actually release too. So what you're seeing here in this sheet are the different ways energy is conveyed by humans, and it's just different ways to look at it. We get sad, we can be neutral. When I say neutral, I mean that's just the state we're naturally in emotionally. And then we get happy. We shift from that neutral state, happy, sad, neutral, happy, and I really have to put an emphasis on neutral. Neutral can either be happy, sad. It's just your basic state before you experience a rise in emotion. On top of that, each of these states of emotional energy can be classified under a vibrational energy, where typically people feel like, sad is a low level energy. Neutral is neutral. I mean, I'm not going to explain neutral any more than that. And then happy is a high vibrational energy. You also hear these same kind of vibrational tags put onto things like negative entities. That's a low vibrational energy. You know, when people speak of angels, high vibrational energy. And then the next tier below that, not so much below, but the next way to describe it is that's the frequency that they emit. You know, these low vibrational energies have a low frequency. The higher ones have a high one. But in my opinion, I tried to find a way to put this in the words. A low vibrational energy can still have like a high frequency at that vibration. It's like when you talk about just that very low vibration can be heard at a higher decibel range. It's low, but it's still just as loud, and those things will cause issues. So the big point here is these are the energy states that can be emitted and that these spirits feed off of. The next part I want you to pay attention to are these dynamic states at the bottom. And what these states are is they're just showing a transition between emotional state. So this theory is all working. So at a neutral state, any shift to either a lower or higher vibration from that neutral state causes a dynamic transition. And then inside of a dynamic transition, you have an energy fluctuation that's released from a transfer to emotional state. And that energy fluctuation, when it's released, you might feel it as goosebumps. You might feel it as, oh my God, I'm getting pumped up. But that goes out into the ambient air. That goes out and joins the rest of the energy in the room. And the energy of a site can also operate in these different settings, these neutral vibrational settings, the higher vibrational, lower vibrational. And when you put your energy out there, it is felt at a site. So going to a lower or higher vibrational energy based off of your neutral causes a dynamic transition. A static state is being in one of these neutral, lower, or higher states for a prolonged period of time. The dynamic transition happens as you shift to the state. And the longer you stay in this new state, the more it transfers over to a static position. At the bottom, we have the dynamic static position. I sort of just went over that. The dynamic static position operates as a dynamic transition when you shift to a lower state. Think of it as like a linear graph. As you transfer over into this new state, you're in a dynamic transition. But as you stay at this state and you level out, it's going to be raised, but eventually it'll go into a neutral state. And then once it becomes into a neutral state, then you go into a static emotional state where you're either just sad at the time for a prolonged period of time, or you're happy. The big shift that I think may put out the most energy occurs in like a bipolar state. This bipolar state is a very hard shift. It's a 180 shift from vibrational energy. It's one thing to make a dynamic transition from a lower vibrational to a neutral, but to go from lower vibrational to instantly switching over to a high vibration is a bipolar switch, and I think it puts out an enormous amount of energy. Now, with all that being said, yes, it's a lot. I think these things help, and I think spirits use them to manifest in our plane. Now, you might be wondering, well, what do I want to test? So here's everything that I want to test out, or at least the basis. This is ground level, and I'm going to work up from here. What I want to test here inside of this theory is to put myself in these different states of emotion. I'm either going to start from neutral, which will just be my pre-existing state, and then I'm going to go to a sad, a lower vibrational state. And from that vibrational state, I want to see what is attracted. As I'm making the dynamic transition, or the transition from neutral to a sad state, I'll ask some questions through EVP session. Once I'm in that static state, I'll continue to ask questions, and I'll open myself up to see what I'm feeling. I'm either going to start with neutral to sad, or I'm going to start with neutral to happy. Both are going to occur and put energy out into the room, but I want to see how it shifts my interaction with spirit and what spirits come in to interact with me. At the end of that, I want to make a dynamic static state change. I want to make a bipolar change from either being extremely happy to extremely sad, or being very sad to extremely happy. And so you may be wondering, well, how am I going to accomplish this? And it's something we do every day. It's going to be through music. But before I get to that, here are the modes in which I plan to document everything that I'm doing. So this is what I'm looking for my responses through. Digital recorder, EVP sessions. Spirit box, or as I like to call it, ghost box. Visual, I'll have a camcorder set up with IR light on, recording the whole incident. And then I'll also have a thermal camera, which is going to record my body temperature as things shift. And it was cold as hell in Madison Seminary that night. I couldn't get the shot I wanted with the thermal cam, but I was able to at least get me sitting in a chair. So the 4 methods that I'm going to use to document any changes are EVP, spirit box, visual, and thermal cam. I had an EMF, EF, RF meter. I didn't use it at the time because it wasn't going to give me the responses I want. I ended up using my buddy's gear, but it didn't work out for me. This is why this is base level stuff. It will evolve. So I'm going to show you now what the test setup is going to look like. I'm going to sit in the chair. There will be an audio recorder there capturing the ambient noise of the room. I'm going to use one of my high-end recorders, which is the LS10, which I think records at like double CD quality, and LPCM format, not MP3. Use LPCM, a wave type format. Try and stay away from MP3 recorders because they will compress your files and they will eliminate the extra added things that you need. I actually would have to suggest that you use a higher end recorder in one of the old Sonys or Olympuses from like the early 2000s. That's a whole nother conversation though. So I'm going to sit in the chair. There'll be a camera on me, and there'll be a thermal camera on me. The spirit box will also be there. Now, in the actual test that I did, the spirit box was used for just a second. As these things go on, I might use it more. But in terms of just overall activity, I use it when I feel a need. I'm listening to music this whole time. I'm listening through a wireless headphone set. These are around the ear headphones, so I'm not hearing much of the ambient noise at all. And I have music on my Spotify set to make me sad and make me happy. And let me tell you, I mean, I've already done the experiment. I've got everything on video, but let me tell you, the music I chose to make me sad really made me sad. I don't know if any of you ever played Final Fantasy VII, but you know, growing up, that was my game. I started out with like Final Fantasy VI was my first Final Fantasy. I played Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, Final Fantasy 6/3, Final Fantasy 2, and Final Fantasy 7 came out, and we were like, oh my god, did they actually run up to the enemies and hit them? Yeah, they did. And one of the enemies also stabbed my favorite character in the back. And so I listened to Eris's music, Eris, whatever you want to call her. I call her Eris back in the day. And that is a song I avoid like the plague, because it hit me. It hits me here too when I listen to it. I don't know if I'm gonna show you all that, but it hit me. I avoid that song like the plague, and I played it. I played the orchestrated version and the one from the video game to make myself sad. I intentionally made myself sad as hell for this experiment. I'll show you more when I get the video out for that. And then the actual songs that made me happy. I had a playlist for that. Those are just more random. I'll try and share some of the artists. If I can put some of the music on there, I will. Typically video game music I can put on here all I want. I've already looked up Squaresoft's rules, so I'll put some of the video game music, but the rest of it was like poppy music. Anyway, so in this study, the subject has to be isolated. There cannot be multiple people in the room while you're running this study. Multiple people in the room mean multiple emotional energy ejections, or you're emitting from 2 to 3 different people their emotional energy, because their moods are going to shift while they're watching you. The purpose of this is one-on-one interaction with potential non-physical intelligences, with the purpose of emotional energy serving as a conduit to increase activity through manifestation, macro or micro PK activity. There is no buddies in this. If you want to run this experiment, you run it by yourself, and people can be out in the hallway. And I will tell you, like I said before, I've ran this already. And on this next page, these were the things that I thought was going to happen. I expected increased response rates. I haven't had a chance to review that. I expected a polarization of unseen entities that came in. I felt I should get a shift in energy. So I will tell you, when I did the sad music, I had goosebumps like crazy. There was even one point where I thought a certain entity came into the room once it realized I was sad. At the bottom, a shift in my own psychological perception of paranormal experience of the site, plus an energy drain. I can tell you right now from the experiment, this was the prominent result of the mood shift. As a medium, I am not the Goku of mediums, but as a medium, there was a shift in psychological perspective. And as a result of that shift, I had at least 2 incidents in my mind from a mediumship standpoint, the same things I used to walk the outside and inside of the property. I will post that medium walk from the inside this week, hopefully. But different things came. Now that's just anecdotal evidence. And I don't know if you guys noticed, a lot of this is psychological interpretation of what we're picking up. But until I get the additional information and the camera and the thermal images and things like that, all I have right now is my psychological perspective, and a shift in mood will shift as a medium how I interpret the place, and it did. So there will be at some point where I wear headphones and I make this a walking experiment, because Madison Seminary had a ton of things in it, and it took a certain alignment of your own energy in your body, your own vibrational energy, to perceive certain things there. And when I was in a low vibrational state, my perception increased. when I was in a high vibrational state, I saw things that came into the room that were in groups, and they liked the vibration. So anyway, I've said too much. I'm hoping that this screen capture works. I'll try and get this out, and what I'll do is I actually have a video of the setup I did inside of Madison Seminary. I'll try and post that along with this. So if you're wondering, I'm gonna do a who I am video, but this is all I'm about. It's never enough for me to just go in with recorders and gadgets to figure out what the paranormal is. There's a hard psychology to this. There's sociology involved. There's a language of energy involved in everything we do when we research the paranormal and parapsychology. It's not just the spirits you need to study. You have to study yourself.